The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
You don't string along Donald Trump. He knows the game.
I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks.
President Trump's new timeline for what could ultimately define his legacy. The Israel-Iran conflict escalating by the hour. Stranded in a war zone, the mounting frustrations as the options to evacuate safely dwindle. Why some Americans feel like their government has abandoned them.
Because as everybody here knows, I won that election by a lot.
A new probe into old claims of 2020 election interference. The evidence the FBI says it just turned over to Congress that implicates China. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News Now. We are glad you're here with us. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. On this weekend edition, we take a look at the big headlines of the week and we look ahead at what to expect, starting with the 4 big stories we've been following this week. The Federal Reserve holds interest rates steady following their latest meeting. And the president extends ByteDance's deadline to sell TikTok or face a ban. Plus, China now under investigation for election interference. And later, lawmakers address last weekend's what they say are politically motivated shootings. But first, the conflict between Israel and Iran has now been going on for more than a week. Friday, European leaders met with their Iranian counterparts in Geneva. The talks were described as very serious, but no further details were provided. President Trump is also leaving time for diplomacy, saying he'll make a decision on next steps with Iran within 2 weeks. Friday morning, Israel and Iran exchanged missile attacks. Iran hitting a residential area, injuring 5 people. Israel says it hit several industrial sites. Continuing coverage, a level 4 do not travel advisory remains in place from the State Department regarding U.S. citizens. This all comes as thousands of Americans in the Middle East right now struggle to get home. Here's national correspondent Kayla Gaskins.
As Israel and Iran continue firing missiles at each other, thousands of American travelers, tourists, pilgrims, and professionals have found themselves trapped in a war zone. One of those is Braha Banian from New York City.
That was quite scary. It hit pretty close to home when you go to a cafe and then the next day you go there and it's not there anymore.
Shortly after the attack started, Israel closed its main international airport in Tel Aviv, canceling all flights in and out of the country. There's still no timeline for it to reopen. Warren Cohn from Florida is among those trying every option to get home.
It's so frustrating. Like something will open up and then it'll close.
The options available are still very risky. Crossing by land into Jordan or Egypt means hours of being exposed to possible missile attacks on the roadways. Some are now even chartering boats to Cyprus. As countries like Germany and Poland get their citizens out, the U.S. offering no such assistance yet to private citizens.
I'll say when it really hit me, and I got annoyed about that today, was when my friend who's with me and colleague, who's German, said that his country is working on it, and he almost left today. He's probably going to leave tomorrow.
Do you feel stranded and abandoned at the moment by the United States?
I think every day that goes by, a little bit more. I miss my wife and kids terribly. I want to get back there.
Banian, though, among those choosing to shelter in place.
There's also a risk of trying to leave right now. I'm not so sure if I feel like the airspace is so safe. And also, I feel like I should be here right now.
Meanwhile, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis sending 4 charter planes to evacuate 1,500 stranded Americans who made it out of Israel to Cyprus. The majority of those were from the Birthright Israel program on an educational trip for young Jewish Americans. On Thursday, American Airlines and United Airlines suspending more flights to the Middle East, pausing service to Qatar and the UAE. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
The Federal Reserve is leaving its key rate steady at 4.25%, where it's been since December. But policymakers did note that 2 more rate cuts could be on the table this year. Trump blasted Chairman Jerome Powell on the White House lawn, saying the Fed head is acting political and not bringing interest rates down, given that inflation is slowly ebbing. Powell argues Trump's tariffs will likely result in higher inflation and lower growth ahead.
He probably won't cut today. Europe had 10 cuts and we had none. And I guess he's a political guy. I don't know. He's a political guy who's not a smart person, but he's costing the country a fortune.
Changes to trade, immigration, fiscal, and regulatory policies continue to evolve, and their effects on the economy remain uncertain.
That's despite reports showing inflation is slowing while the unemployment rate stays low. There are questions whether that continues in the face of Trump's import taxes. Looking ahead, the trust fund that manages Social Security benefits for some 70 million Americans is expected to run out of money within 8 years. In an updated forecast, the Social Security Board of Trustees warns that unless Congress acts before 2034, benefits will be automatically cut by 23%. That's largely because of a new law that increased benefits for nearly 3 million people who had pensions from jobs not covered by Social Security. New details: President Trump is extending the deadline for TikTok's parent company to sell the app or face a ban here in the U.S. Trump signed an executive order to keep TikTok running in the U.S. for another 90 days. It marks the third time he's pushed the deadline as the administration works to bring the platform under American ownership. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says the president is fulfilling his promise to keep TikTok from going dark.
There are 100 million Americans who use this app. It's widely popular. He also wants to protect Americans' data and privacy concerns on this app, and he believes we can do both things at the same time. So he's making an extension so we can get this deal.
Trump's decision to continue allowing access to TikTok through executive order has faced some scrutiny, but the orders have not been challenged in court. TikTok denies that it poses a security threat to the U.S. New information on alarming allegations of interference in the 2020 election by the Chinese Communist Party. FBI Director Kash Patel says he sent documents to a Senate committee that show a plot involving fake driver's license to be used for illegal voting. Here's the National News Desk, Christine Frizzell.
FBI claims surround a plot by the Chinese Communist Party to manufacture fake driver's licenses and ship them to the United States to be used for mail-in ballots, claims backed by the president.
It came out with China and the license plates, tens of thousands of cards. They used those cards to vote on the second election, my second, the one 2020. Because as everybody here knows, I won that election by a lot.
U.S. Customs and Border Protection did seize more than 20,000 fake IDs made in China and Hong Kong in 2020, but it's unclear what they were to be used for.
We heard these tidbits about China trying to do something with fraudulent ballots to go into these states that were toss-up states and throw the election. So we were hearing that, but then there was nothing that was done, and the FBI said there is nothing to it. It's internet rumor.
The FBI announcing it has located and declassified documents in response to this request from Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, asking for a September 2020 intelligence information report from the FBI's Albany field office. A description of the investigation into the allegations, also accusing the FBI under President Biden of destroying intelligence materials. The allegations, though, only appear to be backed by a single whistleblower, with critics asserting the probe is only to satisfy the president and answer critics who say the FBI hasn't done enough.
Director, with all due respect, we've been talking about this for a long time, and I've been demanding accountability for many, many years. You mentioned Comey, Strzok, and the rest. They've got TV shows. They've got media platforms. They're fine. There's been no accountability.
Well, look, it's a fair criticism, but what I will tell people is we weren't here in the FBI in the last 5 years.
This investigation by the Senate Judiciary Committee is just one of many looking into decisions that were made during the 4 years under President Joe Biden. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, is celebrating new border numbers. In a post on X on Tuesday, Homan wrote, President Trump's leadership has resulted in the most secure border in this nation's history. In the last 24 hours, the Border Patrol encountered a total of 95 illegal aliens across the entire southern border. That is the lowest number ever recorded. Homan added that Congress needs to pass the Big Beautiful Beautiful bill to fund further deportation efforts. U.S. Border Patrol agents say they have uncovered a drug smuggling tunnel, as you can see right here behind me, linking Tijuana to the San Diego area. They say the tunnel extended more than 1,000 feet inside the U.S., and they describe it as highly sophisticated. It wasn't yet complete, but had electrical wiring, lighting, and ventilation. Agents say it also had a track system designed for transporting large quantities of contraband. Contractors will pour thousands of gallons of concrete into it to close it up. A top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee is calling for an investigation into the forcible removal of Senator Alex Padilla by FBI agents at a Homeland Security event last week. In a letter to FBI Director Kash Patel, Representative Jamie Raskin says it was a vivid episode of authoritarian tactics and is asking for the FBI to arrange a briefing. DHS claims Padilla didn't identify himself as a U.S. senator. The FBI declined to comment on that request.
I think this partnership is tighter than ever.
Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer talks with us about the country's alliance with the United States amid Israel's war with Iran. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz now openly calling for regime change, saying Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is a modern-day Hitler and he cannot continue to exist. Less than 5 minutes after that social media post, Israel's ambassador to the United States, Yael Leiter, said this on a taping of the Armstrong-Williams show.
You made it clear, unlike President Trump sometimes alludes, you're not interested in a regime change. That's up to the people there to change the regime.
We're not in that business.
You're not in that business.
We're not in that business.
The latest statement from Israeli officials seem to blur the line between Israeli and American interests and operations. Our coverage in the Middle East continues as Israel and Iran continue to trade strikes, with neither showing any signs of backing down. This as the world waits to see if the U.S. will get involved. Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer joined me earlier this week to discuss.
Our goal was to achieve two things. We wanted to remove two existential threats to the survival of the state of Israel. The first one was the nuclear threat, and the second is the ballistic missile threat. Where are we on the nuclear threat? Israel has taken out the main enrichment facility in Natanz, where they spin the fuel that you need for nuclear weapons. We took out centrifuge manufacturing facilities. We took out a conversion facility where you would convert that uranium to the stuff that you need for nuclear weapons. And in the first minutes of this battle, in the wee hours of last Friday, we took out the top scientists in Iran who were working on their Manhattan Project. And this is the project to get Iran an atomic bomb. And Israel is a country where Iran is publicly calling and actively working to destroy the state of Israel. So we want to make sure that a country the size of Israel, which is all the size of New Jersey, is not facing an enemy that has 10,000 or 20,000 of these ballistic missiles, because that too is a threat to the survival of Israel. So what are we doing there? We're going not only after the missiles itself, but the manufacturing sites where they produce these missiles. Israel for Iran is the little Satan. The great Satan is the United States of America. So you have an Israeli David that is fighting an Iranian Goliath. And we are systematically taking on this threat, not just for us. Of course, we're doing it for us because they're calling and working to destroy us, but also for all of our Arab neighbors who are threatened by Iran, and also for the United States. We are the front line of civilization in a very, very dangerous region. And you don't have to here put American boots on the ground, because you have in Israel an actual partner and ally that is fighting your fight. And that's why our victory, and it will come, we will be victorious. Our victory, Israel's victory, will be an American victory as well.
I understand that you've been in touch with the administration officials. Any indication of what could come next?
There has never been this tight of a partnership than the one we have today. First and foremost, led by President Trump, who has been a tremendous friend of Israel. Right now, America is helping defend Israel. You're doing it with Aegis ships that are actually intercepting some of those rockets that are aimed towards Tel Aviv. You're doing it with THAAD, a THAAD system, which is another missile interceptor system. And you also have American pilots who are in the skies knocking down drones that are being launched at us from Iran. So we are deeply grateful for the president's support. And I can tell you, I'm on the phone every day, multiple times a day, with the senior officials in the administration and Prime Minister Netanyahu. He just spoke to President Trump yesterday. He spoke to him a couple days before that. I think this partnership is tighter than ever.
Is there a chance for a deal at this point?
We worked very closely with the U.S. administration during those negotiations, and ultimately Iran wasn't serious about it doing deal. Will they try now to rush at the last hour as everything is being taken away from them to do a deal? Who knows? But I trust President Trump that he's going to stand firm, and he has clear red lines, and he's going to enforce those red lines.
The bunker-busting bombs seem to be the wild card here as we look at the U.S. potential involvement. Could that, in your opinion, make the difference?
Well, listen, that's an American decision, Didi, and I think the President of the United States is going to have to make a decision of what he thinks is in American interest, and I think he's holding his cards close to his vest, and he's leaving all options on the table, and that's exactly what an American president should do.
Does Iran have enough ballistics to go after the U.S. and Israel?
Didi, let me ask you a question. If you were the Iran, would you go after the United States? I think that would threaten the very survival of the regime.
And to watch that interview in its entirety, be sure to follow The National Desk on YouTube. You can also find a link on our website. That's thenationaldesk.com. By the numbers, what do Americans think of launching airstrikes against Iran? Polls paint a complicated picture. One recent Washington Post survey shows broad opposition. 45% say they don't support strikes, to 25% who say they are not opposed. 30% are unsure what to think. A separate poll done by Fox News shows voters think Iran poses a real threat to U.S. security. President Trump is mulling a strike on an underground bunker targeting Iran's nuclear plant. Government data shows more than 2 million new cancer cases and nearly 620,000 cancer deaths are projected in the U.S. this year. But a new Trojan horse therapy may help change that. The Fact Check team's Janae Bowens joining us now to discuss, and some experts say it sounds promising. Tell us what they found.
Yeah, Didi, so this new treatment is for blood cancer affecting plasma cells in the bone marrow. Now, it uses antibodies to deliver chemotherapy directly into cancer cells, working like a Trojan horse. Now, studies show it keeps the cancer at bay 3 times longer than current options with fewer side effects. This smarter, stronger, and gentler therapy could be a step toward long-term remission or even a functional cure. And all of this is according to the BBC.
And gentle therapy is so great to hear. What's next for this treatment?
So right now it's being used in England for patients whose first-line therapies failed, but experts are already testing similar Trojan horse drugs for other cancers, including breast, stomach, and bowel. This could be just the beginning.
Yeah, hopeful news for many families. Janae, thank you. Janae, we'll be back in a few moments with how early signs of cancer are being found in patients' blood up to 3 years before a diagnosis. Coming up, the new security measures the city of Austin is adding in response to a surge in crime on buses. And the new effort to stop thieves from stealing guns from cars, a crime that's on the rise. The National News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America, and we begin in Washington after police rescued a girl kidnapped by a complete stranger.
The suspect in this case was booked into the Pierce County Jail on a warrant unrelated to the missing child, but then released. Tacoma police quickly found him and that missing 2-year-old because so many people in the community acted right away.
It was seriously one of the a best case scenario where we had all the footage.
The girl's mother reported her missing around 9:30. A short time later, an employee at the Wendy's restaurant on South Prospect Street called police to report a man in the store who said he found the child and was trying to locate her parents. When the suspect heard that police were coming to help, that employee said he took the child and left in a silver sedan. In this case, police had surveillance from the restaurant and the public calling in many tips after they read the Amber Alerts. One of those callers provided the key bit of information that led police right to the man's house, where officers found him and the missing girl.
Ellis Travis now always makes sure his car is locked when he walks away after crooks recently broke into his vehicle to steal electrical equipment.
The equipment that they have taken, I use. So replacing that's the only big thing that bothers me.
Equipment, not the only stuff thieves are targeting.
Oftentimes, people leave their guns in their vehicle unsecured. The car gets broken into, the gun gets stolen, it gets on the street, and it gets used in other crimes.
Over the past 2 years, Columbus police say 922 firearms have been stolen from cars. This year alone, at least 180 guns have been taken.
I believe in the right to own a gun, but there is a responsibility that comes with that.
Take the gun with you, properly secure it wherever it is that you're going.
Being a female riding the buses, it's a little scary.
Bonnie Cudlip rides the bus 3 to 4 times a day. She hasn't seen any of the new transit police officers today, but says their presence on buses, at stations, and along key corridors is both wanted and needed.
Sometimes I take the bus as early as 5 o'clock in the morning and it's dark. So I'm in a very dangerous position. So law enforcement being present, specifically in areas where there's higher traffic, definitely.
What we want to do is make sure we get our officers out there in the field, have a visible presence so people can see them.
The goal is to put officers at high traffic areas such as Republic Square to reduce crime and other issues.
We're going to have a small amount of officers starting off, so we're going to have to be very, very strategic. We can't be on every corner, on every bus, but we will do everything we can to respond as fast and as appropriately as possible.
Coming up, an urgent alert from Honda. Your brakes could fail. The issue forcing vehicles to be stuck in park. Also, Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest sees the return of a superstar contestant, the hot dog eating champion, now back where he belongs. Taking a look at the top trending stories on our website right now. The King is back. Joey Chestnut will return for Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest on Independence Day. He's won the contest 16 times and holds the record for most hot dogs eaten at 76. Tom Cruise, Dolly Parton, and Debbie Allen will receive honorary Academy Awards at the 2025 Governor's Awards. The award is a Lifetime Achievement Trophy given out by the Academy's Board of Governors. Also, friends and fellow Food Network stars pay tribute to the late Anne Burrell, who died this week at the age of 55. Rachel Ray saying she is heartbroken over the loss. Those stories and much more available right now at thenationaldesk.com. Honda is recalling nearly 260,000 vehicles over a potential brake issue. The automaker says the pedal pivot pin may not be properly secured. That means the pedal could shift out of position, impacting the ability to slow down or even stop. This recall covers certain 2021 through 25 Acura TLX and MDX and 2023 through 25 Honda Pilot vehicles. Impact vehicle owners will be contacted by mail. Nippon Steel finalized its deal to outright buy U.S. Steel, despite President Trump saying he would only allow the deal as an investment, not a complete purchase. The deal allows Trump to veto any decision to reduce production or staffing levels. Trump held a rally at U.S. Steel headquarters a few weeks ago. At the time, some union officials praised the deal, but the United Steelworkers Union continued its opposition. Still to come, a superpower increases their military presence in the Pacific. The aggressive actions from China putting the U.S. and Taiwan on edge. You're watching the National News Desk, America's News Now. You can catch us live weekdays from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time and anytime online at thenationaldesk.com. We'll be right back. The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
We are seeing a dramatic increase in threats against senators, congressmen, public officials.
The Minnesota lawmaker shootings, the call for increased security as lawmakers work to tone down the rhetoric.
Israel managed in 2 days to completely dominate the Iranian skies.
A retired IDF brigadier general talks with us about Israel's approach to its war with Iran, what he's saying about a chance of ground operations. Then, move over, Alligator Alley, the unique spot Florida officials are now considering for a potential migrant detention facility. From the nation's capital, this is the National News Desk, America's News. Now, I'm Dee Dee Gatton. As we begin this block, this hour, members of Congress receiving a security briefing this week in light of the shootings of 2 Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses outside Minneapolis that authorities say were politically motivated. National correspondent Atra El-Nashar reports from Capitol Hill with renewed calls for increased security for lawmakers and for lawmakers themselves to tone down their rhetoric.
Suspected Minnesota assassin Vance Luther Bolter is behind bars, and for some members of Congress, the chilling reality is setting in that their names were on a list authorities say they found in his SUV, like Democratic Congresswoman Hillary Scholten of Michigan.
I got the call Sunday night, of course, while the shooter was still at large.
Immediately after the attacks, Democratic leadership requested Capitol Police provide extra security for Minnesota's congressional delegation.
We are seeing a dramatic increase in threats against senators, congressmen, public officials.
It was just Monday a man in Georgia was indicted for allegedly threatening sexual violence against Republican Senators Deb Fischer and Ted Cruz and Cruz's family. In the past year, there were 2 attempted assassinations of then-candidate Trump and an arson attack at the residence of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. Usually, a president calls a governor after a tragedy in their state. President Trump issued a statement condemning the violence in Minnesota, but says calling Governor Tim Walz, also a former Democratic vice presidential nominee, would be a waste of time.
I think the governor of Minnesota is so whacked out, I'm not calling.
Hours after the attacks, Senator Mike Lee posted claims on X that the suspect was a Marxist, implying Democrats were to blame for what happened. The suspect's roommate later told reporters he was a Trump supporter. Minnesota Senator Tina Smith, a friend of slain state representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark, confronted Lee about this Monday.
He has a powerful platform. He should not be using it to spread misinformation and to basically make a joke of the murder of people.
Leaders on Capitol Hill are looking at increasing funding for Capitol Police, which is requesting an additional $176 million for 2026, which would bring their budget to almost $1 billion. Capitol Police say in 2024 alone, they investigated over 9,400 concerning statements and direct threats against members of Congress, their families, and staff, up from 8,000 the year before. On Capitol Hill, I'm Atra El-Nashar for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Continuing coverage of the Israel-Iran conflict as the world continues to watch what the U.S.'s next move will be. Retired IDF Brigadier General Amir Avivi joined me this week to offer insight on the war. First, what is your assessment of the IDF's overall approach to the war thus far?
So Israel went to the war because Iran started moving very, very fast towards the production of 9 nuclear bombs and also building industries that will enable them to produce 300 ballistic missiles a month. They were moving fast, and Israel has no choice but to retaliate and attack and stop them from really reaching these nuclear capabilities.
Well, you mentioned the aerial warfare. This isn't traditional, though, because it appears for the first time the IDF has utilized AI. How could that work for or against their campaign against Iran? And also, is there any chance that any response could include ground operations?
So in the last 6-7 months, from the moment the government instructed the Mossad and the army and the military industries to shift all center of gravity towards a decisive attack on Iran, Israel has developed cutting-edge technologies that are really bending the laws of physics and chemistry, doing amazing things. And these capabilities are now used in this war against Iran. And this is why Israel is succeeding in a very short period of time to reach dominance, to really be able to control what's going on in Iran and attack fiercely while degrading their ballistic missiles.
So it sounds like from what you're saying, the focus, your expectation is the focus will be on the airspace in the days to come. And President Trump obviously allowing for 2 weeks of diplomacy before deciding whether the U.S. strikes Iran. My understanding is the bunker busters have never been deployed in combat. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. The U.S. has two major capabilities that were not given to Israel. One is the Moab, the mother of all bombs. This is a bomb that cannot penetrate deeply, but it's a massive bomb that can be carried, by the way, by planes used by Israel. But then you have the GBU-57 on B-2 that is really the bomb that can destroy a site like Fordo.
Do we know if the bunker busters, though, if they would make a difference with Fordo?
Yes, definitely. They can make a big difference and really make sure that this site is destroyed completely, and also deepen the destruction of other sites that Israel already attacked. I hope that President Trump will choose to join the attack, and I think it's important not just looking at Iran or assisting Israel. This is about really the place of the U.S. Globally, the leadership. This is needed to deter China from invading Taiwan, to deter Russia from further aggression in Europe. And if the U.S. doesn't show willingness to fight somewhere, if they don't join, this might send the wrong message to other countries that they are free to pursue their goals.
If President Trump's past comments are any indicator, it could come down to the last minute. We are watching it closely. We will be in touch with you. Retired IDF Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you for joining us tonight on the National News Desk.
Thank you very much.
A 30,000-pound bomb might be the most important weapon in the Israel-Iran war, and only the U.S. has it. Boeing's GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP, is the world's most powerful non-nuclear bomb. The 20-foot weapon, nicknamed the Bunker Buster, has never been used in combat, and its nickname suggests the U.S. Air Force says it was designed to reach and destroy adversaries' weapons of mass destruction located in well-protected facilities. That's something Israel needs as it targets Iran's nuclear facilities like Fordo near Tehran, which is said to have been built nearly 300 feet underground. Meanwhile, from the Mideast hotbed to the simmering tensions in Asia, all eyes are on Taiwan, where the island democracy is on high alert over China's military activities in the Pacific. China, of course, claims Taiwan is part of its territory, and the world fears a conflict could unravel there as well. Keep in mind, a potential war would not only devastate Taiwan, but it could bring the global economy to a grinding halt, since the world relies on Taiwan's factories for the majority of its advanced computer chips. Former Navy SEAL and podcaster Sean Ryan spoke to the vice president of Taiwan about that exact threat. Take a listen.
We in Taiwan believe in sustaining peace through strength. We are all peace-loving people. We certainly do not want to see conflict. We will do everything we can to prevent a war or conflict from happening. But Taiwan alone will not be enough to deter the aggression. And we do need to work to further establish partnerships that will support the deterrence against a conflict.
Now you can catch Sean Ryan's full interview with the VP of Taiwan on his podcast, The Sean Ryan Show, and you can download that podcast across all podcast platforms. The Supreme Court term now nearing its end. It's been dominated by emergency appeals from the White House, but justices still have 16 cases to resolve before the end of June. One case is related to the Trump administration's attempts to eliminate birthright citizenship and whether judges can issue nationwide injunctions. Other cases are related to religion in schools and congressional mapping in Louisiana. Florida Attorney General James Othmeyer is pitching a new migrant detention facility in the state he's calling alligator Alcatraz. The AG posting this video to social media showing the 39 square mile site at the Miami-Dade Collier Training and Transition Airport in the Everglades. He explained why the area presents an efficient, low-cost opportunity to build such a facility.
People get out, there's not much waiting for them other than alligators and pythons. Nowhere to go, nowhere to hide.
Uthmeyer estimates the facility could house up to 1,000 illegal immigrants and be up and running within 30 to 60 days of construction. Researchers at Johns Hopkins have found that cancer may be detectable in the blood up to 3 years before a diagnosis. The Fact Check team's Janae Bowens is back to discuss this with us. Obviously, an incredible discovery, Janae, because we know that early detection saves lives. Tell us more about this research.
So, Dee Dee, this study in cancer discovery shows that tiny DNA fragments shed by tumors called circulating tumor DNA can be found in the blood years before cancer is formally diagnosed. Now, researchers compared blood samples from 26 people who developed cancer to those who didn't. Using a multi-cancer early detection test, they flagged tumors in nearly a third of cases and even spotted signs in samples taken over 3 years earlier.
What's next for the research?
Well, the test is promising, but it's still early stage. Researchers say it needs to become more sensitive to spot even lower levels of ctDNA over time. And of course, it will need to clear regulatory hurdles before being used widely. But scientists say this could be a game changer, a step toward catching cancer before symptoms even start.
Yeah, we hope it is. Janae, thank you. For more on this Fact Check team topic, including links to their sources, scan the QR code or visit thenationaldesk.com. So to come, our team of correspondents breaks down this week in Washington, from the ongoing conflict between Israel and Iran to the security concerns surrounding members of Congress.
And welcome back. Our Washington Bureau covers the nation's capital every day, and our team of correspondents reports on the important issues facing the country and how they impact you. As the conflict between Israel and Iran continues, Americans in both countries are scrambling to leave. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, you spoke to some Americans in Israel who are having trouble getting out of the country.
I did, Steve. So there's plenty of Americans that traveled into Israel, say last week or a few weeks ago, and never thought that their trip would last this long. Once the conflict started, when Israel started firing those first missiles, the main international airport in Tel Aviv got shut down, and so did everybody's international flights got canceled. Well, now these Americans are trying to figure out how exactly they're going to get home. They do have a few options. Some are crossing overland into Jordan. Some are crossing overland into Egypt to take flights out of there. But that poses its own dangers because you're exposed on the roadways for hours at a time. So if a missile attack happens then and you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, it could not be good. Americans are also chartering boats over to Cyprus in the Mediterranean and taking flights out of there. But what the Americans that I talked to were especially frustrated with is how the U.S. Embassy is handling this. They say people from Germany, from Poland, other friends that they're talking to just in and around some of these Israeli cities, their countries are helping them evacuate. They're working to get all of their citizens out. Now, right now, the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem has started evacuating some personnel. But as for private citizens, they haven't taken concrete actions as of yet to help those people that are left behind.
When it really hit me, and I got annoyed about that today, was when my friend who's with me and colleague, who's German, said that his country is working on it. I know there's a lot going on. I know it's a war zone. I know.
Do you feel stranded and abandoned at the moment by the United States?
I think every day that goes by, a little bit more. Like, I miss my wife and kids terribly. I want to get back there.
And then just today, Steve, American Airlines and United Airlines ended up pausing all of their flights into both Qatar and the UAE. So it seems like it's getting harder to get out of the Middle East instead of easier.
National correspondent Kayla Gaskins, thank you. Meanwhile, after last week's shooting in Minnesota killing the state's House Speaker and her husband, lawmakers here in Washington are growing concerned about their own safety. National correspondent Audra Elnishar, what are members of Congress saying about the current political environment and their security?
Well, they're really terrified, and it's both sides of the aisle, right? These Minnesota shootings were targeting Democrats. But Republicans, too, are extremely on edge. Dusty Johnson, the lone House member from South Dakota, he's a Republican, says he's now sleeping with a loaded gun near his bedside. And, you know, this is something that we saw right after January 6th, a record high number of threats against lawmakers. And according to Capitol Police statistics, we're near those similar numbers now. I think everyone in their personal lives can feel it, that this is a very politically divisive time right now, and that's manifesting in violence against lawmakers. Tragically, 2 people lost their lives. One of them was a politician, but these are people. A mother and a father, Minnesotans, people who lost their lives in their home in the middle of the night. And so the House was out this week, scattered across the country in their home districts. I know, for example, Hillary Scholten, she's a Democratic congresswoman in Western Michigan. She found out from Capitol Police that she was one of the names on the alleged shooter's hit list that officials found in his car, in his SUV. She had a town hall that was scheduled for Monday that was postponed for safety reasons. So people are trying to, you know, be as cautious as possible. The Senate, though, was in Washington. They got a briefing, a security briefing in light of what happened in Minnesota. Take a listen to what one top Senate Democrat said after that briefing.
Senator, how would you characterize the briefing that you had just now?
Sobering.
Why is that?
The threat to public officials and their families is very real and very widespread.
Is enough being done right now?
No.
Sobering, yeah. So Capitol Police is requesting about a 22% increase in their budget. Right now they're operating on frozen 2024 levels. That would bring, should they get what they are asking for from Congress, that would bring their budget for 2026 to close to $1 billion. But remember, they are taking in a lot. They, last year, they say, processed and investigated more than 9,400 suspicious comments or threats against lawmakers, their staff, and their family members. Steve.
National correspondent Audra Elnishar, thank you. Meanwhile, the Food and Drug Administration announcing sweeping changes to the review process for drug developers. National correspondent Christine Frizzell, you sat down with the new FDA commissioner this past week. What did he have to say about all this?
Yeah, Dr. Marty McCary was nominated by President Trump to make some changes at the FDA. He was one of the voices that was sort of outspoken during the COVID pandemic about how things were mismanaged, how things were done wrong. And one of his really big goals here is to just kind of remove the bureaucracy at the Food and Drug Administration. So he's just announced this new voucher program. Basically, this rewards these big drug companies if they sort of get on board with government priorities, meaning they work to make more drugs manufactured in the United States. They try to make drugs cheaper for everyday Americans. If they can do this, well, they're going to voucher. So that will limit the review process that it takes a drug to get to the market from about 10 to 12 months down to 1 month. Here's a little bit of our conversation.
We'd like to reward good behavior in the marketplace. 1 month turnaround time for a final drug application is worth well over $100 million in market value.
Are there concerns, though, that by going from 12 months to 1 month for the review process, that it will compromise the safety of these drugs?
We've done everything humanly possible to make sure we're still doing the same scientific review, but in a much more efficient way.
So in other words, he wants to cut red tape. He says that they're using artificial intelligence tools to try to go through, 1,000-page documents. He also says some of these companies, what takes so much time in the review process is waiting to get a phone call back from the FDA, waiting to hear back about something. He's trying to streamline that. But I can tell you, I've also talked to some people inside the agency. They are very concerned about what this process means, that it could compromise the safety and security of drugs. A lot of them also say, he's basically playing favorites and rewarding these drug companies, which already make billions of dollars. He's going to help them save a lot more money.
Yep, continued sweeping changes under this administration. We'll see what the long-term effects are. Christine, Audra, Kayla, thank you all for your hard work. Back to you.
Up next here on the National News Desk, rideshare users in Texas may have to wait a little longer for Tesla's latest innovation, the Texas law preventing the rollout of their autonomous vehicles. Then, the first city in the country to remove forever chemicals from its firefighters' uniforms. News Desk team of reporters is bringing you the headlines from coast to coast. We're taking the pulse of America. Then we start in Rhode Island with a major step towards protecting the health of firefighters.
It's a life-changing first happening right here in East Providence.
To become the first department nationwide that is entirely non-PFAS.
The fire department is the first in the country to have gear that is non-PFAS for the entire department, also known as forever chemicals that can be found almost anywhere and are resistant to breaking down, sometimes leading to major health problems for the human body. Legislation passed this year prohibiting the manufacture, sale, or distribution of any firefighting protective equipment containing PFAS chemicals.
Bottom line is, our first responders, they put their lives on the line every day for our residents. And, when you have them using equipment that's putting their lives on the line, it was time to make a change.
In Las Vegas, residents are experiencing extreme heat across the state. Temperatures are expected to reach anywhere from 105 to 115. Death Valley could get as high as 120. Experts warning residents to stay hydrated and not to spend too much time outside. Pets should also be kept inside. And in Austin, Texas, lawmakers are asking Tesla to delay its robo-taxi rollout. The debut was originally planned for next week, but a law revision would require additional approval.
Any company that wants to have autonomous vehicles on the streets needs to get approval first from the Department of Motor Vehicles. We just want to make sure that our community is as safe as possible when they launch the new robo-taxis.
The new law would also require companies to provide instructions to first responders on how to stop, move, and communicate with them. Still ahead, retail sales continue to slump. The reason for the pullback in spending as Americans plan for the future. Then, celebrating too hard, the hockey world champions put a crack in a piece of coveted hardware. The plan for a fix ahead of the championship parade. The Florida Panthers had a cracking good time this week, celebrating their Stanley Cup win over the Edmonton Oilers. So much so, Panthers players managed to crack the rim of the trophy. But no worries, the Hockey Hall of Fame says the cup will be repaired in time for the Panthers celebration parade this weekend. Retail sales slumped in May as Americans pulled back on spending ahead of President Trump's tariff regime. Data released today from the Commerce Department shows sales at retail stores and restaurants fell 0.9% after a smaller decline of 0.1% in April. But economists expect the overall consumer spending for this quarter to grow. That'll be all for us on the weekend edition of the National News Desk, America's News Now. Don't forget, you can catch us live from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. and 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time. Check your local listings. You can also watch us online and catch up with the latest headlines on thenationaldesk.com. Thanks for watching the weekend edition of the National News Desk. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and from all of us here, have a great week.